3, 2.
Hello, Graham.
Well, Faith, happy Christmas, my dear.
Hello to those of you watching this. Unfortunately, Graham's connection is a little bit choppy today, so I'm sorry if you noticed that throughout the video. Luckily, his audio is still great, so feel free to close your eyes or close this window and just listen along this time.
Oh, I am so sorry to be choppy. Believe me, I'm at peace. You can't tell at peace I am. I've been trying to stop myself being choppy, but such is the modern language of Zoom. Well, Faith, happy Christmas, my dear.
Welcome back to Tea at 3, Looking for Good. I am Faith Schmidt, and this is Graham Kerr. And here we are, another week back. For me, this week has been ultra quarantined, so not a whole lot has happened in my life. But I'm still in that mode of looking for good every day, and it's always so good to come back here and share those little moments.
Wonderful. You know, I found that everybody seems to be sort of busily trying to decorate themselves, even though nobody is going to come into their property. It's just each of us have our little monastic cells here, but people put up Christmas cards and do their Christmas trees and everything else, just as though a crowd was going to come in. It's just a habit, but it's something that is extraordinarily sparkly and pleasant.
Yeah, there's something always very comforting about Christmas decorations.
Isn't it? I didn't like it, you know. I was brought up in the hotel business. And so my mum and dad worked really hard over Christmas. So we never had an individual Christmas tree. There was one in the lobby of the hotel. So that was it. So there were no gifts under that for us. I don't ever remember as a child getting a wrapped gift. I remember getting a puppy once, and it's hard to wrap a puppy. And I got a bicycle, and it's a bit, it uses too much paper to wrap that. But I can't remember any small gifts. And I can't remember sitting over a Christmas meal with a family. Now, poor me. So the only reason I'm saying that is for this reason. I don't have memories of Christmas. None. As a child. So I married Trina, and when we were 21, and Trina came from an abusive childhood in which, if she was lucky, she got an orange for Christmas. There were no gifts, period. And her father was a fine artist, and he would lock himself up in his studio and paint a self-portrait of himself playing Xabres España for 2 days. He didn't eat, he just painted a picture of himself, and then he put his foot through it at the end of that time. So this was her upbringing. So you can imagine, she marries me, I'm completely oblivious of Christmas. And she has been starved because she knew other people had Christmases, which were wonderful. So she reinvented Christmas. Big tree, about the same size as the one behind you, and hung with innumerable ornaments. It was just, and then she started buying in June for Christmas presents for us all. And we might have 30 or 40 gifts wrapped under that tree. It was an avalanche. Now, I can tell you, my kids would tell you that we used to cringe at Christmas because we just knew how much she wanted to do it, and we just didn't get it. She was compensating, and we were trying to catch up for her sake. So we really didn't like it. So I came to the conclusion that Christmas was just a giant commercial con job. That was my attitude. And it even spilled over a time when I became a Christian. I still had a negative attitude towards Christmas. I couldn't understand what joy was all about. Trina passes, and now I'm on my own. The kids have flown the coop and have families of their own. And so I am irritated by the word joy on all the Christmas cards that I'm getting. So I say, not exactly what I would call prayerfully, what is this with this damn word joy? I just don't get it. It's just a commercial exercise. I think there's a word for that kind of behavior, but whatever it is, I was it. And immediately when I asked, show me what joy looks like, I find myself in a nativity set, not a nativity, but the nativity. And there's Joseph and Mary, and there's Jesus wrapped up and everything else, all of which everyone is familiar, whether you're a Christian or not. And there's that scene, and I'm standing in this scene, dressed up like this, you know, and Mary looks up and she doesn't say, what are you dressed like that for? You know, she just says, would you like to hold him? And I've tried to hold my newborn kids. You know, I've been given them each to hold. It's kind of a tradition. And I was always scared to death of dropping them, you know. But I wasn't scared this time. I held him in my arms and I felt his little heart beating against mine. And I looked down on this puckered little face, newborn, eyes tight shut. And I started to cry. And the tears that I had weren't pain or upset. I was crying out of pure joy onto this little bundle. And for the longest time, I would describe this to somebody, I started to cry again because the emotion was so enormous. And I looked down and I seemed to be saying to the little baby, you came because you love me. And it was so incredibly personal. And since that time, I've had an absolutely splendid time at Christmas. And I have a tiny little tree and I dress it with Trina's earrings.
Oh.
She had an abundance of earrings. I gave all the baubles away and I've hung these little earrings all over the Christmas tree. That was such fun because as I was hanging each piece on each branch, I was remembering her fiddling with these and putting it through her pierced ears. They weren't clip-ons, they were able to pierce. And that's a very handy way of hooking it over a thing. So if anybody is losing their mum and their mum has some earrings, it just might be an idea. I've never heard of it before, but I've done it for 3 years now since she passed. And I just love doing it. I just think she would have such joy in it being celebrated this way. So that's my little bit of joy for this time.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That
How are you doing?
Her enthusiasm and legacy can live on through you finding joy in this holiday. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Christmas has always been a very, very warm and welcoming and happy memory for me. I think the times that I've been thinking about more lately, when thinking about the idea of luckily I am able to quarantine and my family gathering is quite small, so it's a little bubble that I will be traveling to. So I'm able to do that this year. However, there have been times in the past where I have not been home for Christmas, and I've been reminiscing in those, in like the positive and the negative aspects of those. There was one largely because I like to travel and often end up traveling and not being able to come home for Christmas during traveling because it's very expensive to travel around that time. And so there have been two specific times one where I was in Oslo, Norway, and one where I was in Melbourne, Australia. It's a time for me where it's like very, very like viscerally reminiscent of like being in a cozy environment with my family, and to not have that was like, it was very sad. Fortunately, I live in a time where it's very easy to communicate with my family while I'm in a different country. So I was able to call them on those days. But it was also a time where I was in a completely different place in someone else's home, and yet felt as welcomed in those places as I did in my own family home. And it was such a beautiful experience of like global community to have that feeling of welcome in a different country with a completely different family that barely knew me. And it was just amazing to experience like that the joy of Christmas can be contagious throughout the world, and that we can all come together throughout that. Even if people are celebrating something different, it still is this time of year that like we're coming to the end of a year and we're about to have a new one. It's going to be a fresh start for everyone, you know, like we can all come together and have this attitude of community and welcoming. What I think what was weirdest about the time when I was in Australia was that it was warm and we were going to the beach and and it was Christmas.
Yes,
but
yeah.
We were able to go next door to a church that was right by where we were staying, and they were having a big Christmas barbecue, and like they didn't know who we were. We just like picked a random church nearby, and they were having a big barbecue, and they were like, oh, hello, welcome. And like they sent us home with all their leftovers. And there was a time where like someone really needed flour and they were cooking something. And so we're just like, well, we live next door. We'll just like go get some flour and bring it back. It was such a fun experience, and like just such a welcoming moment, those times where like I wasn't home, but I was in an environment where I was very welcomed. And that's not very comparable to the having to stay at home and still not be with other people. But hopefully like through this like technological experiences, you can know that there are people out there that love you, and there are a lot of people out there willing to spread joy even in like really hard times. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Thank
you. Yeah.
That's a marvelous segue for me as well. You are so good at dropping hints for me, and you're what don't they call a GPS system where they drop breadcrumbs? They call them breadcrumbs where you've been, and so you just drop some breadcrumbs. Now, thinking of a local church, and let's go to Albania. All right. It's in the Mediterranean, far down the Mediterranean, just above Turkey, if you will, on the map. And small country, about 2.5 million people altogether, really going through a hard time at the moment, really. And they don't have the safety net system that we enjoy in this country. They don't have the same food bank availability and everything else, but there are 2 or 3 small churches that I know of that are putting together a food kit of literally flour and olive oil and that sort of staples, just so that people can have something to eat over Christmas. And they've told me that these are costing them $24 each to be able to pack this up, and provides food for a week, I think it is. It's very reasonably priced. But your story of hopping next door to get some flour made me think about what these people are doing at this Christmas time. And they're literally going with the love that they have for their neighbors and dropping this parcel in for no other reason, but they know people have a need for basic food. So that's really important. And, I'm just about to lose my reward. There's a scripture which says that if you tell people what you're going to do, if you give, then, it's a nice thing to do, but there's no reward in that for you. If that's the case, then I don't mind. But I'm told that there's a very good chance that by the time you and I finish today talking, that the government will have made a decision about a check which comes to each of us because we're citizens. So my specific need for that check is not obvious to me. But then these people's need for $24 a kit for food that would actually put food on the table over Christmas, that seems to me to have just arrived at the same place at the same time. So if that does happen, there's going to be about 30 families in Albania who will be treated with the Lord's love for them by their neighbors. And that for me sounds like Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there we are.
Is that why you have your globe there behind you on your lamp? Or is that a new
I have
cover for your lamp?
Thank you for noticing.
Does it light up?
Thank you for noticing that. Yes, it does. Oh, just a moment.
Wow,
Joy
it's way bigger
to
than,
the
oh my
world,
goodness.
and all the earth too.
That's awesome.
I think if it lights up, it tends to put me in the shade, which is perfectly reasonable. Yes, yeah, that's my hope for the new year. It's been darkened this year, and it's going to get lightened in the new year, and I can't wait to see all the good things that are going to happen. We'll be able to report them to each other.
Yeah. So we've had a family tradition for a long time of a little portion of gifts has always been like, there's programs where you can send a card to someone else saying like, I donated a goose to this family in this country on your behalf.
Yes.
Like those kinds of things. And I'm so ridiculously grateful that has been something that has been ingrained in me as like a tradition to do on Christmas. Like that's such a cool thing to be inspired to do during this time. And so I've loved always having that as a kid, like having that like, oh, someone somewhere has like chickens now because and they've sent that gift in my name. That's such a cool concept for a gift. And so I'm happy to continue that on like throughout my life. But it's always something I think about at this time of year too, which is a very good routine to have.
Good. Well, it's a good time. I'm thinking also this year of asking around my friends who has a husband or wife who's died recently. And then what I'm planning to do, I've found 3 of them so far. I'm planning to ring these people on Christmas Day, trying to see whether they're there, and to say you must be missing your loved one and my friend at this time. And I just wanted you to know that I was there with you during that. I thought that would be bring a little joy, hopefully, into that life at that time. So that's another little way of doing it. It's such a splendid idea for me, never having understood joy at Christmas, to look forward to a season of just celebrating this joy and even crying because of joy. I think that's special. Yeah. So it's wonderful to be with you. And the next time we get together, we're going to be talking, I think, about the new year and New Year's resolutions. And I'm so looking forward to that. I always look forward to talking to you. So that's part of the joy of my life.
I always look forward to it as well. And hopefully you watching also look forward to this. And so thank you so much for being here and slogging through. Not every day is a good internet connection. Hopefully that's relatable for some of you. But thank you so much for being here and watching. Tea at 3, looking for good. I am Faye Schmidt, and this is Graham Kerr, and we will see you again next week. I believe next week will be kind of a shortened episode as we're all over the place for the holidays. So hopefully you have an absolutely wonderful Christmas holiday time. Whatever you celebrate, have good moments with family together or separated, but hopefully it is filled with joy and good. And we will see you next week. Also, if you're not subscribed to this channel already, that helps us out if you could be. And if you liked watching, you can like the video. That also helps us out. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're looking to be as invested in this program as we are, we do have a monthly donation service where you can just donate a little bit a month. That helps us continue on with this program. It's called patreon.com, patreon.com/T@3, and the link is down in the description below. So thank you so much to everyone who is already over there, and thank you if you're even subscribed.